Hi guys, and welcome to Curated Logic. Today I'm going to be doing a follow-up video to the first challenge video I did a couple of weeks ago. If anyone watching hasn't seen that video, I have linked it in the description below. So have a look, give yourself a challenge, see how you do. But for those who have watched it, you will know that I set the challenge for both yourselves and myself to complete as much of the logic maze truly cryptic as we could in 3 hours. In my 3 hours, I was only able to get up to level 14B. I was stuck on level 14B for an hour and a half. But in the interim, which has been 2 weeks, I've been able to complete the entire game. So as I promised, I am making this video a walkthrough. I want to stress that this video I'm not intending to be for people just to get the answers and breeze through the entire game. This video is for people like me who get stuck on a particular level that they can't find help for anywhere, in order that they can now find some assistance and potentially solve it with a little nudging in the right direction. So I'm not just providing the answers. What I'm going to do is for each level, I'm going to provide a few hints. Then I'm going to take you guys through the steps I took to solve the puzzle, and then show you the answer. That way, at any point in that process, you can pause the video in order to carry on my logic with yours and solve the puzzle yourself. In order for this to work, however, I'm going to put in the description little timestamps for each new level. That way, you're not cycling through trying to find the level you want and accidentally stumble on an answer you don't want to see. Just click the timestamp for the particular level you want and you'll be taken to it. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so the logic for this level is all in the title. As it says, change numbers to, and then it gives you a picture of some letters. So obviously, we are trying to change the numbers provided to letters. You can see straight away that the highest number provided is 25. And considering there are 26 letters in the alphabet, for most people, it should be pretty obvious what to do. So if we go ahead and change each number to the corresponding letter that is in the same position as the number in the alphabet, we should see that the 1 equals an A, 14 equals an N, then an S, W, E, R, which is answer. And when you do it to the rest, it will say answer is hallway. Once again, this level is all in the title. As you can see, there is a hint below, hint 3, that says, if you still don't know what to do, try reading the level title out loud, quickly. The level title is anagram. So if we try that quickly, it is anagram or anagram. So let's take the letters we have, go to Google, and see if we can find an anagram solver. Just as a hint for these anagram solvers, I would suggest that you look for an anagram solver that also includes the word Scrabble in it. What I mean by that is, in addition to being just an anagram solver, it's actually a Scrabble anagram solver. The reason being is that when you don't have it linked to a Scrabble dictionary, I have found that the anagram solvers online will often provide you anagrams that make nonsense words. So they're not words at all. And then you're sifting through a few words to find the one you want. But when it is included as a Scrabble solver, then you're only getting words out of a dictionary. In this case, we have found that low-end keg makes knowledge. And again, this is an easy level. So everything you need to know is explained to you in the hints and in the title. Basically, what we are trying to do is, as the title says, brighten the image. Once you've saved the image, you can use any application you have on your PC or your Mac. However, I find that the best thing to do in this case is just use an online tool. So I just searched for lighten image and found this particular website which will lighten the image. As you can see, the first time I lighten the image, nothing really happens. I have a look around and there is nothing to see. So rather than take it as me having done the wrong thing, I thought, alright, well, I need to lighten again. So after a couple more times of lightening the image, you start to see something appear between the two kittens. If you zoom in, you will see it is the word elephant. As you will have already noticed, and as it says in the Getting Started page of the website, Google is your friend. So although I already knew what this particular puzzle was about and what I needed to do, I thought I'd show you on Google how to solve it. So here we have two main words that need to be paid attention to. One is obviously Caesar. The other is obviously cipher. In searching for Caesar cipher, you will find that basically it is just a simple substitution cipher. It is something you can do yourselves, or if you want to, find a decoder online like I'm about to. Once you have entered the text you are looking to decode, simply change the number that is the distance between each letter and you will find the answer. As you can see, even though the puzzle says that the number of spaces between the letters is plus 21, I put -5. The reason being is because between -5 and 21 is 26, which is the number of letters in the alphabet, meaning that plus 21 and -5 provide the same letter because you're just cycling through the 26 letters. The phrase we decode is, the secret word is transport. The next puzzle is another puzzle you will be using an online image tool. The hint is in the title. If they stare it from the side, so should we. We take the image and we rotate it, and we see that on the sign, what first appeared to be gibberish is actually a reflected word. Serene. The next puzzle is one I always thought might be a little difficult for people born after 1990. So there is no point in Google searching anything for this particular puzzle, and if you don't know what to do with it, it's only because I suggest you are either too young or you never had a mobile phone 15, 20 years ago. Basically, old mobile phones did not have predictive text. This means to get a certain letter, you had to press the number the letter was on, the amount of times that was equivalent to the position of the letter within the letters on that number. In this case, 2 9s make an X, an 8 makes a T, 3 7s an R, and a 2 is an A. This puzzle requires you to know who Stevie Wonder is. I would be under the assumption that most people doing a puzzle like this would know who Stevie Wonder is, but just in case you don't, he is a musician and he is blind. This last fact is integral to this puzzle. Once that is figured out, you can probably guess that what is presented in front of you is Braille. So, going to Google and finding a Braille alphabet you are able to solve exactly what it says. Answer is powerful. I said this in the original video, but this was one of my favourite puzzles. It didn't take me long, but I really just felt that it was elegant. When hint 2 says, you will need the first and the last, there are a couple of ways your brain can interpret this. But basically, all it is asking you to do is take the first and last letter of each word and put them together. Once you do, you get the word kettle. I went through a few different ways of trying to solve this. I looked for some sort of link in the corners of the picture, being the corner of the sky, but found nothing. What ended up giving it away to me was the little music note at the end of the phrase. To me, this said that it was probably a song. So, back to Google, I just put the words in. And the first thing that came up was Pippin. The original puzzle has said, look for line to word 4, so that is exactly what I did. And there we have it, time. When I first came across this puzzle, I recognized 4 out of the 5 people in the puzzle. I originally thought I would just type in their names and see what they had in common, but found it a little more difficult to find exactly what I was looking for. So the way I was going to do this was implement for the first time a Google image search. Lucky for me, it recognized it straight away, and I was able to see that the 5th person I was looking for was Thomas Jefferson. From there, I put everyone's name into Google to see if there was a particular page that came up connecting them all. The first thing that came up, the first result that came up, was famous amateur violinists. From there, the easiest way to do this was to do find in page and find everyone's name. Obviously, there are a couple of ways you could phrase what they have in common, but the simplest way was the answer: violin. For this next puzzle, it was obvious that we were looking for cities, so I went straight to Google and searched. I found that the cities were in New Zealand first, then Greenland, Madagascar, Georgia, Suriname, and South Korea. The best way to proceed, therefore, was not in Google anymore, but in Illustrator. I took the image provided and I joined the cities as they were grouped. As you can see, although it's not exact, the groupings of the cities all lead to one point in the center, which is, for those who don't know, Saudi Arabia. Looking at this diagram, I took it as each city facing Saudi Arabia, just as Muslims do when they pray. But they don't just face Saudi Arabia, they face Mecca. For this next puzzle, you might already have seen a puzzle like this, but I had not. So I needed to first figure out what it was I was looking at. For this, once again, I headed to Google. I didn't have a clear idea of what I was looking for, so all I put in was grid number puzzle in the hope that something similar would come up. When I searched images, something similar did. Following the link from this image, I landed on a web page that took me to a Wikipedia page that explained about a puzzle called a nonogram. Thinking back to the original puzzle whose title was No times 2 gram told me that I was on the right track because no times 2 is no. Basically, a nonogram is a grid which has numbers against each column and each row. These numbers tell you how many squares in their corresponding column or row need to be coloured in, with a gap of at least 1 square between each set of coloured in blocks. And once everything has been coloured in, you see an apple. I took a look at this puzzle, and straight away I saw one line I recognized instantly. We shall fight on the beaches, we shall fight on the landing grounds, we shall fight in the fields and in the streets. Instantly, I thought Winston Churchill. So, that is what I entered. Although this was not the final answer, it did give me a letter. Because this told me I still had more to do, I thought perhaps the other lines in this speech were not also Churchill. So, I went back to Google and had a look. In doing so, I found lines of speeches from Malala, from Muhammad Ali, from Robert Oppenheimer, from Martin Luther King, and also from Charlie Chaplin. Getting to the end of this, I still had not got the answer. However, I had 6 letters, which led me to a place I had been many times before, the anagram solver. Of course, this anagram is quite easy and you could solve it yourself as I did when I played the game originally. However, I did just want to show you the continued use of an anagram solver within this game. Only 3 words came up with these 6 letters, but only one of those words gave me reason to think it would work. When I first saw this puzzle, my instant reaction was trying to solve the puzzle for X and Y. However, when that did not work, I went to my next solution, which was to graph the puzzle. If you type in plot equations to Google, you will find that there are many websites that do this, and you can just plug in the equation and they will graph them for you. In this case, the equation formed a heart. Now, this is the puzzle I got stuck on for an hour and a half when originally trying to complete this challenge. I look at this puzzle now and see how simple it is. The real problem I had was thinking that 14b meant it was probably connected to 14a in some way, when realistically it is not at all. What you are looking for in this puzzle is what code might on and off candles represent. After a little more thinking on it, I googled Morse code. Using the Morse code like I did the Braille, I was able to see that the candle spelt out SMOG, smog. An improvement in technology when it comes to phone, as I hinted at in an earlier puzzle, is that of predictive text. So in this case, you are no longer plugging in the exact letters you want, you are letting your phone do the work. So when you put in 7, it could be P, Q, R, or S. When you put in 3, it could be D, E, or F, and so on. So all you're doing is having a look at what letters it possibly could be and see if any of them together form a word. When you do this, you see that a word that can be produced is scent. When I first looked at this, I did indeed try to do a Google image search, which did not work. So I had to have a look at what was actually in the picture. On first glance, it was quite difficult to make out any identifiable shape or image. However, when I had a better look, especially in the top left-hand corner, I realized that something potentially looked like a bull. So I went to Google and I searched bull, and the title of the level, masterpiece. When nothing came up with this, I added the word painting. And lo and behold, after a very short scroll, there it was. Pablo Picasso's Guernica. Again, the first thing I tried to do on this level was do an image search. And although at the time I didn't think this produced anything of value, looking back, it actually did. The image is of the Tower of Babel. Confused by this, I realised that all I could do now is try to find out what the words were. The way the words were written screamed to me that they weren't a code, but rather they were in a foreign language. Entering the title of the level, I get the word 17, which just so happens to also be the level's number. All I needed to do now was enter the words underneath the picture. But doing so, only one word appeared in English. This said to me that either Google Translate wasn't working, or all the words were in different languages. In searching the rest of the words, I was able to decipher underneath it saying season is the answer. The next level took a little bit of time to solve. Squaring the words as the title suggests did not make sense to me until I realized that the number of letters in all the words combined was 49. 49 is a square number, being 7 squared. So I decided to take the letters in chunks of 7 and literally square the words. When done, most of it did not make sense, but as you can see, the center column spelt out something everyone would recognize: America. In this puzzle, I recognized 3 logos straight away. The only logo I didn't know was number 2, so once again, a Google image search was going to help. Luckily for me, the Google image search worked well, and I was able to find out that that logo was for Reebok. Going back to the puzzle, I was originally unsure what the numbers meant, but I ended up figuring out that not only were they the position of the logo, but also the position of each letter within the logo's name. This spelt out tent. The next puzzle was self-explanatory. You had to take the answers to the puzzles you had previously done and put them in the crossword, revealing certain letters that you needed to use in order to form a word. Taking our letters in red to the trusty anagram solver, we found 2 possible solutions. Mutilate, which didn't strike me as the answer the puzzle wanted, and ultimate, which did. For this level, for the sake of time, I am not going to play you the track that is provided. All you need to do, as it says, is download the audio to your computer. When you do, you will find that the track is sped up. You can use anything from iMovie to iTunes to Media Player, whatever you need to slow down the audio and reveal that it is actually saying a poem. One of the words of this poem is bleeped out. So, all you need to do is Google to find out what word is missing. Following that along, I found that the missing word was meteors. Here, the biggest hint is once again in the title. You are looking for odd numbers only. You will find that in every number that is provided, when you add up the odd numbers, they equal the number to the right. 3 numbers are missing. What are those 3 numbers? Just add up the odd numbers. Once you've done that, you will quickly realize that what you have is 777. Putting this in as the answer does not work, so you have to find something that this number represents. After an initial search, you will find that 777 is an angel number. This again does not work as the answer, so you have to dig a little deeper. The other thing that 777 often represents is when you win at slot machines. So I put into Google 777 win. This provided a list of slot machine websites which often had buzzwords like win and bonus and jackpot. Instantly with this puzzle, I recognised both images as Jim Carrey, as I'm sure many of you did as well. But when I tried to put in Jim Carrey, all I got was this. So I had to have a think. I knew who Jim Carrey was on the right, being the Riddler from Batman Returns. However, I did not know exactly who Jim Carrey was on the left. Once again, trusty Google image search gave me the answer. This image was from the cover of a movie called The Number 23, in which Jim Carrey plays someone who is obsessed with the number 23, as I found out many people are. I had originally known about this particular phenomenon because I have the number 23 tattooed somewhere on my body, but not for this reason. In researching this phenomenon, I realised that it was called the 23 Enigma. Now this word, enigma, struck a chord with me. So I searched Riddler, Jim Carrey, and saw that my hunch was correct, remembering that in the movie Batman Returns, the Riddler's real name was Edward Nygma, or E-Nygma. These next puzzles are really typical riddles and logic puzzles. They are ones that are done the world over and are called rebus puzzles. While I knew what these puzzles were straight away, I just wanted to show you how easy it is to Google search word puzzles and find examples of these type of puzzles. This will explain how to do them and in turn make the level much easier. So, this first one, because there are 4 bids next to heaven, it's heaven forbid. For this one, you can see that the word written is calm, but it's written in a downward fashion. If you put those two together, calm written down, calm down. The next one, the little letters are Rob, and they're in the middle of hood as the bigger letters. This means that Rob is in hood, being Rob in Hood, or Robin Hood. And probably the hardest, this showing you H through O of the alphabet, is H2O, which, as everyone knows, is water. For this puzzle, once again, I tried a Google image search with no luck, so I had to identify exactly what it was asking me. It was asking me to identify a tall building in the distance. So I thought, let's look up some tall buildings. In doing so, I found a website for the tallest buildings in the world. And looking back at the original image provided, I saw that this particular building kind of had a couple of stripes near the top. So I went down to the tallest building to work my way backwards, but straight away saw that the tallest building, being the Burj Khalifa, also had these stripes. No matter how savvy you are with mobile phones, there was no way this particular group of numbers was going to be able to be typed into any phone to provide you an answer. I figured this out straight away, so I was trying to figure out a different way to interpret the numbers in order to provide an answer. It was then that I realized that each number was connected to the numbers on either side of it. So I decided, let's get out Illustrator again and join the dots. In doing so, letters were spelled out, with the third repeating the first letter, and when they were put together, this is what you got. Pupil. Having worked in a bookshop, I recognized this image instantly. It was on the cover of this particular book when the movie adaptation came out. But for those who don't recognize the image, again, I wanted to show you how easy it is to Google image search this particular image to find out what it represents. The life of pi. Looking at the numbers on the picture, I realized that they were too vague to provide any sort of page or letter reference. Then I saw, once again, the title, and I recognized that series of numbers. The 5 numbers in the title are the first 5 numbers after the decimal point in pi. From there, what was originally a very vague set of numbers on the picture became a very specific set of numbers on the picture as I looked for each number of spaces after the decimal point and took the number that I found and made it into a letter. And just like in level 1, I changed the numbers to the letters, and I got the word ignite. Once again, on this level, you are provided with music. I'm not going to play the music for you because not only is it a waste of time, but also because you don't need to play the music at all to get the answer you need from it. When you download the music, you get a file. The file you downloaded comes with a picture. Again, some people might not recognize the picture straight away, but to be on the safe side, I decided to do a Google image search. This was the cover for the song Escape. But as so many levels before it, this only gave me an extra clue and was not the answer. What was provided was a short phrase, obviously either jumbled or complete nonsense. I decided that the best way forward was to once again use Google. I searched the phrase as it was written, and funnily enough, it came up. But when it brought in the results, it rearranged the words to form a quote by Langston Hughes. On looking at the next level, it was immediately obvious that the letters provided were incomplete fragments of bigger words. Spending a bit of time looking at the different directions of the letters, I was able to work out what those words might be. So, I entered them. Just as a side note, although I only enter 5 words in, there are actually 6 you need. You will see this on the next page. In figuring out which words to enter, I also realized that like a crossword, some of the words shared single letters. This helped me understand that perhaps I had to form a sort of crossword with the words. What I ended up with was this. Straight away, I thought it was a swastika, so I went back to the puzzle and entered that, but was immediately disappointed to know that I was in fact wrong, because apparently a swastika faces the opposite way. Therefore, I had to head back to Google and find out what a reverse swastika was. A quick Google search did provide this answer, with a swastika that faces the left called a swastika. This puzzle throws hints at you both in the title and in the actual hint below the picture. A common trope of puzzles is to change letters into words that sound like the letter itself. So for instance, the letter T might be represented by a cup of tea. In this case, the answer lies within the C's. So I went to Illustrator and joined all the letter C's. Within the C's sat 11 letters. Again, you can do an anagram solver for this, but straight away it was clear to me that the word I was looking for was embarrassed. I don't know how clear it is on your screen, but in the middle of the heart in this next puzzle are 5 numbers between 1 and 5. Because the word heart has 5 letters and there are 5 numbers provided, the largest being 5, I figured out quite quickly that these must represent the letters that correspond with the number. So, for instance, the 2 would be E, because the E is the second letter in the word heart. As you go along, you realize that rearranging the letters of heart in this way forms the word and the solution, earth. This next puzzle took a bit of time. There were a lot of different things I tried, thinking pound was something to do with weights or money. However, in the end, the solution was quite simple. As I said in the hints, this puzzle is exactly what it says. I took the puzzle as literally as I could and took the small, what looked like to be a comma, and added it directly to the word pound. This produced the word round. This next puzzle I understood from the outset. Separating out the vowels from the consonants told me that they needed to be combined once again. So I felt the best way to do this was once again go to Illustrator and placing the vowels within the consonants in the order that they appear. I would only place them in a way that they formed legitimate words, and after a bit of trial and error, this is what I ended up with, providing the answer I needed: attack. As I said in the hints, once again, the title of this page is important. I did not actually realize the importance of the title until after I had solved this puzzle. But if you say the title quite fast, you get Samuel Morse Code, which almost sounds like Samuel Morse code. Samuel Morse was the inventor of the Morse code. It took a little bit of thinking, but I realized that perhaps going down the tree, when you go one direction, may be a dash, and when you go another, it may be a dot. So, for instance, if you take going left as a dash, number 1 would be a dash to Morris, a dash to James, and then a right being a dot to David. Dash, dash, dot. I tried both possible combinations to this, but only one formed a word outright. That word was gelato. I initially thought this next level would be incredibly difficult. Trying to sift through a number of different kanji writings or Chinese writings or whatever, I thought was going to be impossible. However, I discovered quite quickly that there is an online tool that helped. By searching Chinese handwriting decoder, I found that there were a number of websites you could actually draw in the Chinese symbol and get a translation. Having no other real course of action, I decided to give this a go. To my astonishment, this worked really well, and after a little bit of translation and a Google image search, I was presented with this. Apparently a very common saying and an almost as common tattoo, hope and faith was followed by love. But trying this in the answer box did not work because we are not speaking English. So after a quick translation, I was able to find the real answer. Love in Chinese, which is I. A-I. Given the title, it was obvious that these were some sort of ancient symbols. When searching ancient symbols, I often start looking for ancient alphabets, and then if that doesn't work, I look for ancient numbers. In doing so, I was able to find what was termed as the magical mathematical world of the ancient Mayans. This allowed me to hone my search more directly, and when I looked up Mayan mathematics, I even got an example of how they do their multiplication. The process that was provided by the website I found, I was able to calculate this particular puzzle to equal 2012. I was nervous about this puzzle at first, but I quickly decided that the only thing I could do was to Google search any words that came to mind when I looked at each image. So I went to Google and I searched green trees, red roses, rainbow, moon, baby, in the hope of something coming up. And the first thing that came up was What a Wonderful World. I feel like other people would have done this puzzle differently. When I looked at it, I seemed to recognize this style of writing, but I couldn't place it straight away. And then I had an idea. I realized I recognized it as what I thought was the phonetic alphabet used by Wikipedia. So I decided to look up someone who I believed people would absolutely need their names spelt phonetically. This proved successful, and clicking through on this, I was able to find the alphabet used. Going back to the puzzle, I employed the alphabet to reveal it saying, light of my life, fire of my loins, my sin, my soul. In doing so, I realized it was a famous quote from the book Lolita. But like so many answers before, this was not going to be the right one. Now looking for the real-life Lolita, I discovered the story of a girl named Sally Horner. Or at least I thought her name was Sally Horner. This took a bit of time because when I tried to enter Sally Horner, nothing happened, so I simply assumed there must be another girl. But what I realized later, as you can see here, is that her name, in actual fact, was Florence Sally Horner, but everyone just called her Sally. So I entered this, with her middle name too, and I was asked to find the name of another famous Florence. But no, not Nightingale. This too took a bit of searching, and after I had tried what I thought was every famous Florence ever, I realized that there must be something missing. So I went back to the beginning. And researching one Florence in particular, I realized that she was also known as Flojo. Flojo, who supposedly had a daughter who sang on a reality TV show. After Googling this, I Googled the lyrics of the song she sang and found Gravity. But still, this was not enough. Tasked with finding the name of the effect gravity has on plants, once again, I headed back to Google. Gravitropism then gave me another question. Looking for the person who introduced potatoes to Greece, I had to find the original name of the university that is now named after him. Once again, a quick Google search not only provided the answer Athenian, but another question, this time about a Grecian volleyball player, who, once Google searched about, was revealed to have previously played for Panathinaikos. Much to my delight, although this wasn't the answer that took me to the next level, what it provided directly gave me the answer. Master of Google. When I looked at this puzzle, there was nothing obvious to do apart from a Google search. So I simply entered the first line. Lucky for me, the first line was one that had been entered many times before. It led me to the Shakespearean sonnet 116, which just so happened to also be the answer. After a lot of trial and error, I just took this level literally. I looked at the image and I saw a tube in the shape of a U. YouTube. After coming to that realization, the letters and numbers provided below were recognizable to me as the letters and numbers similar to those provided at the end of a URL of a YouTube video. So, rather than head to Google, I headed to YouTube. There, I was given this. After pausing the video in the right space, I was provided with these images. And then, after Google searching the images, I was given the name of only one of them. The first man was Heinrich Hertz. But after playing a lot of games like this, I have come to realize that when pictures are bunched together, they are almost always connected in some way that may also be evident on Google. So I clicked on people also search for under Heinrich Hertz, and I found another image. After Google searching these names together, I found a couple of things. They both worked on X-rays and radiation, and they both worked on electromagnetism. And when I searched for electromagnetism, I brought up this. The image of the man in this website struck me as very similar to one of the images in the YouTube video. So I did a Google search for William Herschel and found that he was indeed the man in the original image. Going through this NASA page, there were two other major names mentioned. The first one was Johann Wilhelm Ritter. Now, I looked him up, and once again, there he was. So, in my mind, the fifth name must be the mysterious missing person. So, I went back to the puzzle, tried out the fifth name, which was Villard, and lo and behold, I moved on to the next level. Everything you really need in this level is right in front of you. Although I did it without using any other app, I am going to show you the solution in an app. So when it says branch of numbers and the level number says it all, I straight away figured that the level 40 needed to be broken up into the numbers 4 and 0, and you create a branch of them in the image. I joined all the 4s and all the 0s to create some golden arches. This obviously provided me with the answer I needed, which was McDonald's. Most people nowadays would recognize this as a QR code. You can get a QR reader on your phone, which is what I did. But when I tried to read this code off the computer, it did not work. Mainly because it is the wrong color. You need it to be black and white. So the simplest thing here is to save this image. Put it into either an online image converter or an app you have, which is what I did. And if you change the contrast and change the saturation, it will take out all the color and contrast the black and the white like so. From there, you can use your app to read off your computer the QR code. When this code is read, it gives you a URL. Following this URL, you come to chess.org. For a while, I played around with the pieces and tried to search this particular page to see whether it was a move or a particular piece that I needed as the answer to the puzzle. However, then my eye was drawn to the side of the page where it told me who this game was actually between. Highlighting this and taking it to Google, I found that this particular game, played between Adolf Anderssen and Jean Dufresne, was actually such a famous game that it was given a particular name: Evergreen. Once again, Google image search will come in handy here. I instantly recognized the small tree from the puzzle as the tree on the Lebanese flag. However, if you did not recognize this and just simply Google search that tree, that is what you would also find out. From there, by searching what tree is on the Lebanese flag, you will find out that it is a cedar tree. Enter this into the puzzle, and you get another question. Similar to the question above, I was unsure whether simply doing an image search for this would work considering half the image was missing. However, when I did, it worked perfectly. And I found that the person in the image was Emma Watson. Whenever you see symbols that seem like they ought to be letters, it's quite often best to simply Google ancient symbols. This is what I did, and in going through the images of ancient alphabets, I found an image for ancient runes. However, these runes did not 100% correlate to the runes I had, so I felt like I was on the right track, but not 100% accurate. So I changed my search to ancient rune alphabets. And lo and behold, there were a few, one of which did correlate. After translating the runes, I found that what was said was, "I sung of chaos and eternal night." Plugging this into Google brought up Book 3 of Paradise Lost by John Milton. However, looking at the numbers provided in Hint 2, I realised that each set of numbers had one too many numbers for it to be line, word, letter, as I originally thought. The first number in each set was either a 1 or a 3, and as we were on Book 3 of Paradise Lost, there must have been a Book 1. So I decided I would interpret the first number of each set of numbers as the book number of Paradise Lost. In trying the anagrammed words I could work out from the 6 letters provided from the 6 different groups of numbers, I was unable to find one that worked as the answer. So I went back to the anagram finder and found a word I was unaware of: aether. I have always loved maths problems and number problems, and the first thing I always do when I'm presented with a number puzzle is to look for patterns. This puzzle was no different, and there were patterns aplenty. As you will notice, for instance, lines 1 and 3, the first in each goes up by 10 from line 1 to line 3, the next one goes down by 10, the next one up by 10, and the next one down by 10. What this tells me is that those two lines will add up to the same amount. I tried this also with lines 2 and 4, and although the number was different, it was a 6, it was the same result. Then looking at the numbers they all added up to, each line and each row added up to the same number. This number was 6174. Unbeknownst to me, 6174 is a special number called Capricar's constant. Using Capricar as my answer, I was given a further clue. Now I needed to look up his profile on the social network, i.e. Facebook, and see what I could find. Doing so brought a couple of pictures of Capricar as well as a couple of comments. In these pictures and comments were placed 5 3-digit numbers: 100, 101, 105, 112, and 114. I had played enough of these games to understand what these numbers probably meant, but for those who haven't, Even if you looked up number codes, you would eventually come across something called ASCII codes. As you can see, ASCII codes have a few different codes that all mean a certain letter. When playing around with these different codes, it quickly becomes apparent that the only one that will provide 5 different letters and not other symbols is the DEC code. The letters you get are D, E, I, P, and R. And, although you could do this in your head, putting it into an anagram solver gives you pride. In this instance, I didn't recognize 3 of the images. To me, I could not make out who the bottom 3 people were. So, once again, Google image search is my friend. I ended up feeling a bit stupid not recognizing Monica Lewinsky, but I've never really known what David Blaine looks like, even though I have heard of him before, and the final image didn't show up. Because of this, I decided just to enter the 5 names I had to see what results I got. Instantly, the first result I got was about TED Talks. And my mind went back to the original title of the level, which spelt out TED. Knowing I was on the right track, I decided to figure out who the 6th person was first. The way I did this was find on the TED website a list of all the people who had ever been TED speakers. Luckily for me, these all came with black and white photographs, and although I had some times when I was second guessing whether it was the person or not, when I landed on Amanda Palmer, I was sure I was right. A quick Google image search proved this. So from there, I entered everyone's name. Each name then gave me a specific number word. Knowing they had all done TED Talks, it was not a big leap to assume that these clues were leading me to a particular word within the talk. After going through the 6 talks, I found the 6 words: music, minutes, people, thought, grew, and publicly. Each of these words gave me a new word. However, these words were scientific in nature and told me that they were leading towards a specific species of animal. Although I don't think I chose the most specific word, it did lead me to the correct answer because I got the subspecies of dolphin. In this game of logo recognition, I found the first couple of logos very easy, and I assumed that most people would. Potentially the second logo is difficult for some, however, if you do a simple search for famous logos, it does come up quite regularly. The third logo, however, I had an idea of what it looked like, but wanted to make sure by doing an image search. As it looked like a Pac-Man figure, I decided to look for a Pac-Man-like logo. In doing so, my original hunch was proved right, and I found LG. The next logo I had no clue about, but once again I felt like the best way forward was to take a screenshot and do a Google image search. I was actually amazed at how effective this was. The first answer that came up was the answer I needed: NVIDIA. Having already used one of the logos presented in a previous puzzle, I just had to identify all the rest. Almost all of them I knew instantly. There was only one which I was a little uncertain about, but had a fair idea. So, I looked it up, and saw that once again my hunch was correct. Going back, I entered all the brand names, and was provided with a list of 9 different groups of 4 letters. When I get a puzzle like this, there are certain things I look for first. As you've seen in previous puzzles, often answers are hidden vertically instead of horizontally, so this was actually the first thing I thought about trying. This was my first instinct because all the groups of letters were 4, so you could put them on top of each other and form 4 straight lines of letters. I went into Illustrator, pasted in all the groups of 4 letters, and then had a play around. First and foremost, I wanted to see if any particular order would be readable. After doing this, the result I got spoke for itself. And the answer I was given to the puzzle was pizzicato. As I said before, I love maths puzzles, so when I saw something like this, I was really excited. But my instincts told me that trying to solve the puzzle was not the right way to go, and the best thing to do was, first and foremost, Google. Doing this was absolutely the correct thing to do because straight away Google told me that this particular equation was called the Ramanujan summation. Following this same hunch for the next puzzle, Google provided me with the answer of Euler. This final equation, however, proved a tiny bit more difficult. Putting it into Google only gave me blood pressure results. And I just wanted to show you this because this goes to show how important it is to find a way of saying it that Google interprets correctly. Until I actually wrote the word equals, I didn't get any result. But once I did, the result was first off the rank. It showed me that 158 degrees Fahrenheit was equivalent to 70 degrees centigrade. Centigrade is known also as Celsius. On a roll with the Google searching, I decided to continue this on by looking up the equation presented in level 47A. I found out quite quickly that the result of the equation was sodium ethyl xanthate. Looking up sodium ethyl xanthate, I found saucily that it was often shortened to sex. When I first saw this particular puzzle, I assumed it was going to be incredibly difficult to solve. I thought I would have to go on some wild goose chase, and in fact, for the first couple of minutes, I kind of did. And then I stopped and I thought, maybe, just maybe, a Google image search will bring what I need. And it did. Doing a Google image search of the picture provided gave me the answer straight away. The picture is of the Sonic Hedgehog protein. However, levels A and B of 47 were only a prelude to level 47C. This particular level took a bit of time. I am not going to go through everything I went through to get to the answer. I am just going to give you a quick summation. I recognized that the letters underneath the picture must be of some sort of DNA sequence, so I entered this into Google. In doing so, I came across all these different science texts that spoke about finding the complementary strand to this particular DNA sequence. As I dug further, I found that the complementary strand then led to another strand called mRNA, which then led to another strand of amino acids which formed a particular protein. Once I had found the appropriate amino acid combination, I tried for a long time to find out how we go about finding the name for that particular combination. However, I then found that the programs I'd been using online to help me do this process were actually slightly either inaccurate or just not giving me information in a way I could use it. I decided to dig around and went searching, and I think it was about my fifth program I was using gave me something that really stood out as accessible. As you can see with this particular program, putting it in the DNA sequence and then transcribing it to an RNA sequence and then translating it to a protein sequence gives me a 6-letter word. Each letter is representative of an amino acid as far as I can tell. But when I put it into other programs, it was just giving me different formats that I didn't quite understand how to make into an answer. So I was lucky to find this particular program. However, there are ways you can do it manually, and there are a lot of videos online that you can have a look at to see how to do it manually, which I found after the fact. But the way I did it, the word I got was native. The first thing I thought of to do for this puzzle was obviously to look up the title. Even though I knew the body was not a real one, I realised that the title must be referring to a particular fairy tale, so I wanted to find out which one. In doing a Google search, I found Grimm 53 to be Snow White. Going back to the question, I realised that within the faux fairy tale, there were 5 instances where the names of dwarfs were mentioned. However, no matter what combination I tried, I was unable to find an answer just from these names alone. So I went back to the puzzle and looked up the only other word that really stood out, the prince's name. After finding a very random Facebook page, I realised that the word fleche was actually French for arrow. Now I just want to say that the way I did this, even though I got the right answer, I'm not 100% sure this is what the author of this puzzle intended. It just seems a bit haphazard to me and was not as elegant as some of the other puzzles. However, I still did get the answer, so perhaps it is right. What I did was join all the names of dwarves I found in the paragraph and made it into an arrow, the end of the arrow pointing to the word I needed. This word just happened to be searching. And although, like I said, I cannot be certain that this was the correct way to do it, searching was indeed the answer. Having studied Japanese, I understood that a number of these words did correlate directly to the meanings on the right-hand side. However, you don't have to have studied Japanese to understand that that's what is going on. In order to finish the puzzle, I needed to first look up the words I didn't understand. Once this was done, I then connected the words in Illustrator. Once removing the words, I was left with this shape. My first instinct was to look for logos or famous shapes or signs around Japan. However, none of this came up with anything useful. So, after a little while, I decided that the best course of action was to simplify everything and Google image search the simplest wording I could think of: Japanese lions. To my surprise, this actually worked, and one of the first results I got was a Japanese multiplication example. It explained to me how the Japanese use these lines to perform multiplication. The lines one way represent the two numbers of the first number you are using to multiply. So, for instance, the black lines are 1 and 2. So, for instance, there is 1 and then 2 black lines making 12. The other lines are the second number, 1 and 3 making 13. You then put dots on every intersection the lines make. By then counting the dots on the furthest left intersection, counting the dots and adding them up in the middle 2 intersections, and then counting the dots on the far right intersection, you get the answer you need. So, this is what I did with our puzzle. And in the end, I got 2, 5, 2. This led us to the final puzzle. Now, I have to let you know that this is the only puzzle where a portion of it I did not solve, but we will get to that in a second. The first thing I did was try to recognize who these people were by doing Google image searches. Luckily for me, every single one of the people was recognizable by Google Image. By using their name as a search tool, I realized that each name had connected to it some sort of cipher. 2 of the ciphers needed code words, but the third did not. So, for the first 2, I decided to use a decoding website. For some reason, I decided to start in the middle. And because this particular cipher needed a keyword, I instinctively thought it was probably the surname of the person in the picture. Luckily for me, it was. This provided me with what I assumed was a portion of a sentence. creativity, and lots of thinking. Because of this, I decided to then do the first puzzle to see if I could get the beginning of the sentence. However, when I tried this puzzle, using also the person's name as the key, nothing happened. I didn't get a response I recognized. I tried to use their first name, their full name, their title, the name of the first person who actually came up with the cipher, not the person who it was named after, the person in the picture, but nothing worked. I spent probably about 15 minutes trying to figure out how I could make it work, but never did. And that is the one portion of this game I have yet to solve. That did not matter because I then turned my attention to the final cipher. This cipher was very easy to solve because all it was actually was a different keyboard was used to type the words. So all I needed to do was find a program online that changed the letters in the code to a QWERTY keyboard. This was easy enough as there were so many different programs and websites that did this. And when I did it, I found the answer. Type cellar door into your browser. And I finished the game. Overall, this game was so enjoyable. It really tested me and I had a lot of fun. And I really liked the fact that after I had solved things and gone back to the puzzles, I realized little things that the author had done to make it more interesting. And they're probably things that a lot of people wouldn't recognize while they're playing, would only recognize when they go back. Even though there were a couple of little things that I found a bit niggling, like not being able to solve all of that final puzzle and having a little bit of difficulty with how the Seven Dwarfs puzzle works, I really would recommend this highly, really highly. Hence why I ended up doing the whole thing. I hope this has helped you guys, and I hope you have had an enjoyable time playing along with me and playing this puzzle. As it says at the end of the puzzle, if you like the puzzle and you're so inclined, please donate to Truly Kryptic. We're all trying to create little things here to keep your brain active, and it's not the most lucrative thing in the world, but we love doing it. So any help or any of us can get, it's always handy. I've also created a Patreon page for my channel and the games I'm creating and the website I'm creating. So there is a link in the description below. And if you like what I'm doing and want to see more, please do donate whatever you can. And also, if there are any puzzles or games that you're having trouble with that you want me to try and see if I can solve, or there's any that you loved and you want me to review or set a challenge to, please let me know in the comments below, because I love that type of thing and I love to be challenged. So the more puzzles I can find, the better. Like I said, I really hope this helped you and I hope you enjoyed the first challenge. I'll be releasing another video early next week because this one took a little bit of time to get done, and it will be a new challenge video, so stay tuned for that. Until then, keep your brain active and have fun.